Why did Jesus sigh before the miracle? This hidden meaning changes everything. Have you ever stopped to think about why Jesus sighed deeply before performing that miracle? Amidst so many powerful gestures, striking words, and immediate healings, there's an almost invisible detail that goes unnoticed by most people. Jesus sighed. He didn't need to sigh to heal. The miracle could have happened without that gesture. So why was this moment recorded? What lies behind this silence laden with meaning? What you're about to discover may surprise you. When we read this passage from the Bible more attentively, we realize that the text is not there by chance. Every gesture of Jesus carries purpose. Every pause communicates something, and even what seems simple reveals an impressive spiritual depth. This sigh is not a technical detail of the miracle, but an emotional, spiritual, and profoundly human sign. It points to something that goes beyond physical healing and invites us to look into the heart of Jesus, to his empathy, and to the weight he felt in the face of human suffering. Have you ever experienced this, realizing that someone understands your pain without saying a word? Stay with me until the end, because by delving into this little explored detail, we will discover revelations that transform the way we see the miracles, the silence, and the actions of Jesus. And the closer we get to that specific moment, the clearer it becomes that there is still something hidden there, waiting to be revealed. And as we delve into this subtle detail, it's natural that something inside begins to stir. Because when the Bible lets slip a gesture like this, it ends up touching on experiences we all know. Perhaps you've already felt this silent weight, this moment when there aren't enough words, but the heart understands everything. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you most so far, whether it's a memory, a question, or even a personal struggle. When you write, you're not talking to yourself. You're creating a space where other people also feel seen. If this content speaks to you sincerely, liking the video is a simple way to show that this type of reflection is worth continuing. Each like helps this message reach more people who may be experiencing the same inner silence. Similarly, when you subscribe to the channel, you are saying that you want to continue on this journey, exploring the Bible with more depth, sensitivity, and truth. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, forming a community that learns together, feels together, and grows together. And with this in mind, it's possible to delve even deeper into this gesture of Jesus, because what he reveals goes far beyond what it seems at first glance. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the more we delve into the context of that miracle, the clearer it becomes that nothing there is simple or superficial. That deaf man doesn't appear in the text as an isolated character. He represents a common reality of that time. Living with deafness meant existing on the margins of almost everything. Communication was oral, the teaching of Scripture happened through listening, faith was transmitted aloud. Those who couldn't hear were trapped in a fragmented world, constantly depending on others to interpret what was happening around them. This forced silence created a journey marked by social and emotional exclusion. It wasn't just about not hearing sounds, but about not fully participating in life. Many decisions were made without him, many conversations took place without his real presence. This shaped his mindset, affected his self-esteem, and generated a continuous feeling of invisibility. In a spiritual context where physical limitations were often associated with moral or spiritual judgments, the marginalization became even heavier. There was a profound impact on that man's identity, something that cannot be resolved with just a quick touch. This backdrop reveals important behind-the-scenes aspects of the encounter with Jesus. Before the miracle, there is a long history of silence, frustration, and adaptation. Jesus perceives this. He doesn't just look at the immediate need, but at the entire journey that led that person to that point. This explains why his reaction carries so much emotional weight. The sigh doesn't arise by chance, but from the recognition of pain accumulated over time. When Jesus approaches, he enters this scene laden with meaning. He sees the isolation, understands the social impact, recognizes the invisible suffering. This awareness transforms the encounter. The miracle ceases to be merely an act of power and becomes an act of complete restoration. It's not just about hearing again, it's about restoring dignity, belonging, and voice. Jesus' reaction stems from this profound understanding of human reality. This context prepares the heart to understand that Jesus' gesture cannot be separated from that man's story. Every detail points to greater revelations about how he acts in the face of broken lives. And the more we understand this atmosphere of silence and exclusion, the stronger the meaning becomes of what is about to happen in this encounter, so full of humanity and transformation. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this detail of Jesus' sigh often goes unnoticed, but it carries enormous spiritual weight. It's not a random gesture, nor a sign of impatience or human weariness. It's a reaction born from a full awareness of reality. Jesus looks at that man, but he also sees the world around him. A fragmented, wounded world, shaped by misguided decisions, by a mentality far removed from God's original purpose. The sigh reveals true empathy, not just superficial compassion. That sigh carries weight, spiritual weight, emotional weight. It's as if, for a moment, Jesus felt within himself the impact of that entire human journey marked by limitations, silence, and exclusion. He doesn't sigh because the miracle is difficult. He sighs because human pain is profound, because it should never have been this way. There is a hidden truth in this gesture. God suffers when he sees creation wounded. He doesn't suffer from weakness, but from love. The sigh is the silent language of that love that recognizes the cost of a broken world. And this completely changes how we interpret this moment. The sigh doesn't point to physical exhaustion, but to spiritual awareness. Jesus understands that this man is not an isolated case, but a reflection of something greater. Physical deafness connects to a collective spiritual deafness. People who don't hear not because they don't have ears, but because they have lost their sensitivity. This creates an even deeper layer in the text. The miracle doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens amidst a scenario of resistance, accumulated pain, and human decisions that have distanced creation from the Creator. Jesus' silence, immediately following that sigh, also speaks volumes. He doesn't react with long speeches or elaborate explanations. Silence becomes a powerful spiritual language. Sometimes, silence communicates more than words. It carries respect for pain, mindfulness of the moment, and clear intention. It is in the background of this silence that transformation begins to take shape. Before the visible healing, there is an invisible healing happening in the spiritual realm. This gesture reveals something about the journey of those seeking restoration. God doesn't always begin by speaking loudly. Sometimes he begins by feeling the pain, the weight, the impact of an entire history. Jesus' sigh shows us that true transformation doesn't ignore reality. It confronts it head-on. And when we understand this, we realize that that miracle goes far beyond restored hearing. It touches identity, purpose, and belonging. This moment sets the stage for something even deeper, because after the sigh and the silence, Jesus acts in a way that shatters expectations and reveals even more about how God deals with human suffering. Write this down. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because Jesus' silence at this moment is not a void. It's a message laden with meaning. We tend to live with a mindset that only values what is said, what is explained, what is clearly verbalized. But Jesus often taught in a different way. He taught through gestures, pauses, and seemingly simple decisions that revealed hidden truths. And here, silence speaks louder than any discourse could. This silence is not indifference. On the contrary, it is absolute presence. Jesus doesn't rush to act like someone who only wants to solve a problem. He remains. He shares the weight of that moment. It's as if he were saying, without words, "I see you. I feel this with you." Before divine intervention, there is human identification. Before visible transformation, there is profound empathy. This changes everything because it reveals that the miracle doesn't begin with touch. It begins with connection. Silence also creates space. Space for pain to be acknowledged, not denied. Often, we try to speed up processes, skip steps, avoid discomfort. But Jesus does not ignore human suffering. He does not spiritualize pain to make it lesser. He remains there, aware of the impact that isolation, that forced silence, that marginalization had caused throughout his entire journey. This silence is respect for that man's story. There is a powerful revelation in this. God does not treat people as projects to be fixed, but as lives to be understood. Jesus' silence communicates compassion without haste, care without spectacle. It is behind the scenes of this moment that true transformation begins to take shape. The mindset of the kingdom works differently from common logic. Here, divine intervention does not erase suffering as if it had never existed, but passes through it, validating each layer of human experience. This silence also confronts the observer. It breaks expectations, generates discomfort, invites reflection. Not all impact comes from strong words. Sometimes, the impact lies precisely in what is left unsaid. Jesus knew when to speak and when to be silent. And in this case, silence becomes a spiritual language that prepares the ground for something greater. It creates an atmosphere where healing is not only physical, but profound, internal, transformative. When we understand this, we realize that this moment isn't just about a deaf man, but about all of us. How many times do we carry pains that no one hears? How many times do we need presence more than answers? Jesus' silence teaches us that God doesn't arrive shouting solutions. He arrives walking alongside us, feeling, remaining. And it is precisely this kind of presence that precedes everything that is about to happen next, paving the way for divine decisions that go beyond what the eyes can see. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we observe the sigh in the light of other moments in the Gospels, a pattern begins to reveal itself very clearly. Jesus feels before acting. Always, faced with pain, he doesn't respond with spiritual distance or pre-prepared phrases. He responds with involvement. In different passages, we see Jesus weeping, moved, indignant, saddened. This is not weakness, it is revelation. Revelation of a heart that did not shield itself from human pain, but chose to go through it together. This detail completely changes our mindset about spirituality. Many people still believe that faith is the absence of emotion, that spiritual maturity is about not feeling, not being shaken, not getting involved. But Jesus dismantles this logic. He shows that feeling deeply is part of the journey. The sigh is not just an isolated gesture. It is the expression of a hidden truth. God does not observe human suffering from afar. He enters the scene, breathes the same heavy air, carries the same emotional weight. This stance reveals very clear inner decisions. Jesus does not treat pain as a technical problem to be solved, but as a human experience that deserves attention, respect, and presence. Before the visible transformation, there is an invisible connection. Before the external impact, there is an inner movement in his heart. This makes Jesus' spirituality deeply incarnate, accessible, and real. It is not a cold, distant, or unattainable faith, but a faith that touches, feels, and walks alongside. When he sighs, he is not merely reacting to that man's condition, but to the reality of a broken world. It is as if each individual pain also echoes something greater, something structural, something that wounds the heart of God. This emotional involvement does not hinder the miracle. It grounds it. Power does not come separately from compassion. The two walk together behind the scenes of divine action. And perhaps this is one of the greatest revelations of this gesture. Jesus shows us that feeling does not distance us from God. It brings us closer. That vulnerability is part of the transformation process. That the kingdom of God begins within, in the heart that allows itself to be touched, before manifesting itself outwardly. This understanding prepares the ground to see what is yet to happen in this encounter. Because when Jesus' heart moves, something inevitably begins to change around it. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because all of this inevitably leads us to today, to our own reality, to the places in life where faith meets pain and hope seems to move more slowly. When we look at this gesture of Jesus, it becomes clear that he hasn't changed. He continues to see, feel, and care before any visible restoration happens. The hidden truth that many ignore is that the presence of Jesus doesn't begin with the miracle. It begins with the attentive gaze, the shared silence, the empathy that welcomes before transforming. This completely changes our mindset about faith. We've often been taught that true faith is one that doesn't question, doesn't feel, doesn't suffer. But the gospel shows something else. It shows a God who enters behind the scenes of human suffering and remains there, even when the answers haven't yet come. The silence that hurts you today isn't a sign of absence, but can be a space of profound presence. A place where internal decisions are being worked on, where something invisible is forming before the external impact. How often do we interpret silence as abandonment? How often do we believe that if the miracle hasn't happened yet, then God doesn't care? But Jesus teaches us exactly the opposite. He feels before he acts. He gets involved before he restores. This means that even when nothing seems to change on the outside, something is already being touched on the inside. The journey of faith is not a straight line between pain and solution, but a path of continuous transformation, where each step carries meaning. There is hope even in the intervals. There is purpose in the moments when everything seems suspended. Pain is not ignored, it is acknowledged. Silence is not empty, it is full of presence. And this invites us to a more honest, more human, more real faith. A faith that does not deny suffering, but learns to walk with it, knowing that Jesus does not rush, but neither does he leave. Perhaps today the greatest invitation is not to accelerate the process, but to realize who is with you within it. Because when Jesus is present, even silence begins to take on a different meaning. And this understanding prepares the ground for something even deeper that begins to reveal itself when hope finds space to breathe. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." If you've made it this far, it's because this conversation resonated with you on some level. So do this. If this content spoke to you, if it touched on something real in your journey, subscribe to the channel. Not as just another number, but as someone who wants to continue walking through reflections that go beyond the surface, that help to see faith, pain, and hope with more clarity and depth. And write a simple sentence in the comments so I know you stayed with me until the end. It could be, "This message was for me," or "I'm with you until the end." Reading this creates a real connection and shows that this message didn't just stay in the video. It reached someone on the other side of the screen. If at any point you felt this made sense, leave a like too. It's not just a click, it's a way of saying that this exchange was worthwhile and of helping this content reach other people who may be experiencing the same silence right now. And before you leave, there's a video here that perfectly complements what we talked about today. Click on it and stay with me there, because this journey still has a lot to reveal.